Hey guys, John Bergsman here. We're live on site today at Lakeside Marine up in Mecosta, Michigan. We're going to be dropping in and showing you a couple of boats after our fishing reports. This beautiful new revolutionary Manitou pontoon boat is going to be one of them. We're also going to show you a brand new line of Skeeter fishing boats that they're going to be carrying going forward here at Mecosta and at the Mecosta store. They're also going to be participating this year in the Ultimate Fishing Show and the Grand Rapids Sport and RV Show. So you got plenty of opportunities if you can't make it up to the dealership. Today's fishing report, it's a whole Upper Peninsula report. We've got some awesome pictures, a great report from Mike Coziera from Marquette Adventures Guide Service. We've also got some really good reports coming to you from the Curtis area with walleye and pan fishing, so stay tuned. Today, Upper Peninsula ice fishing here on Fisherman's Digest. So hey, we're going to start in the central Upper Peninsula with Mike Coziera from Marquette Adventures Guide Service. He did his inaugural family outing that he does before he gets into guiding every year, and he whacked the fish. As you see the pictures going across the screen here, it's from Mike's family trip. Tons of really good pan fishing, crappie fishing, bluegill fishing, and also pike fishing on tip-ups. So what's been working for Mike early in the season? Well, the recipe is small inland lakes. If you're looking to get out early, check out smaller lakes. They always freeze up earlier. Mike says that most of the inland lakes now in the central Upper Peninsula and for the Upper Peninsula for the most part have got about 5 to 7 inches of ice. Now we're in between snowstorms. As you guys know, the Christmas holiday weekend is going to have another big snowstorm coming. So it's really good that we get these cold temperatures that are going to put some good solid ice on the lakes before we get another bang of snow. What's been working for Mike? 8 to 12 foot of water for pike tip-ups. Now, pike tip-ups, as far as Mike is concerned, is a super simple recipe. It's braided line to a good stiff fluorocarbon leader. When I say stiff, I mean because you're protecting against the teeth. You're going to use a 15 to 20 pound fluorocarbon leader, maybe 2 foot leader, and then you put your sinker above the ball swivel, and that keeps your baits down. And then you put a treble hook on, and Mike likes to use a small one like a number 8 or a number 10, hooked into the back of either a shiner or a sucker chub. And you're going to set that about with the sucker chub 6 inches or so off the bottom. Now remember, the sucker chub is going to swim around pretty free. You're going to want to put a heavy split shot to keep the base setup down closer to the bottom, but let that sucker chub swim away from the bottom, and then they get tired and they float back down, and then they swim away again and they float back down. It's that swim and float back down action that drives pike crazy. So when you're going to set it, of course, use your depth control device to find out exactly where bottom is, and then you're going to set that live sucker about 6 inches, maybe a foot off the bottom. Just outside of weed lines is where Mike says is the best spot early in the season. Shallow first break where the weeds have laid down and the weeds are present. That's the perfect spot for getting big northern pike to go early in the season. Also, don't be afraid of main lake points, big structural things that the pike are used to using as thoroughfares to get them to the shallow water. Big main lake points are also great spots for big northern pike. Now, when you're panfish fishing, he likes to use tungstens, either the 4 or the 5 mm size. He said some of the best colors, believe it or not, are either a straight dark color like a purple or a black, for dark water conditions if you have some silting that goes on. If you're in light water conditions, a chartreuse or a Wonder Bread is a super good color to use. Wonder Bread being the white-based one with just multiple different colored dots on it. He's tipping those with spikes or waxies, just super simple. Just a spike, a wax worm, something like that. If you're into Euro larva, that also works really good. Multicolored Euro larvas work really good early in the season for big bluegills. Now, if you're looking for crappie, remember that the crappie are going to suspend right below the ice early in the season. So a pinky jig right below the ice, maybe a small Swedish pimple with a back hooked super small. When I say Swedish pimple, I'm not talking about the big 1/2 and 3/4 ounce ones. I'm talking about the smallest micro one they have. Some sort of a jigging spoon with color. Back hook that minnow right behind the dorsal and let that run free on your dead rod, and then rod in hand the other jigging rod. A lot of times that dead rod will really produce a lot of fish, as fish will come up and just grab onto it and mouth it. And if you're using the right dead rod, which has a super soft tip, like almost just goes at almost anything, or a spring bobber, you know, you can catch a lot of fish dead rod in this time of the year suspended. So again, Upper Peninsula everywhere is going on. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to talk about Curtis, Michigan and the walleye fishing that's going on.
Domke Outdoors in Monroe is Southeast Michigan's one-stop sporting goods destination, featuring all your fishing needs, including live bait and the area's largest selection of custom-painted bandit crankbaits. Domke Outdoors has a large selection of guns and ammunition, archery equipment, and supplies, as well as an archery service department and indoor archery range. Stop by today or shop our online store.
Are you with me? Okay. Hey, next stop is just a little bit east of the central UP, and it's the town of Curtis in the Manistique Lakes Recreation Area. Now that's got Big Lake Manistique, South Lake Manistique, and North Lake Manistique. I've got some really good local guys who don't want me to use their names, and I get it, because they said that the walleye fishing on South Manistique Lake first thing has been really good. Now it's an early morning, late in the afternoon bite that's going on, so maybe, you know, get out there before light, set up. That first hour or two of the day has been really productive. Same thing in the afternoon, get there and be set up by maybe 4 o'clock and fish till 6:30. But that first couple hours of the day and last couple hours of the day has been awesome. How are the guys catching them? Well, combination wise, they're doing it rod in hand with jigs and minnows, or they're dead rodding or tip-up fishing. So you're setting one tip-up for yourself and a dead rod next to you, and then a rod in hand so you can fish your spread really easily. And what they're typically doing is setting the tip-up about 6 inches off the bottom with a blue, which is a big silvery shiner, and they're just really doing it really subtly, which is a moderate-sized split shot, maybe 6 to 8 inches above the minnow itself to keep it somewhat close. Set that somewhere in that bottom 1 foot of the water column, right above the bottom. You don't want it in the bottom. You want it off a few inches, but you also don't want it a mile high. You don't want it, you know, 2-3 feet off the bottom. So you're trying to find that perfect 1 foot zone right off the bottom with big blues. Keep them live hooked. Either tail hook them, or right behind the dorsal, you can hook them there too, and if they stay alive, if they're struggling, they're gonna work good. Now that's gonna be your tip-up setup. Your dead rod setup is the same way. I like to use a single shank gold hook on my dead rod, just same thing, and split shot maybe 8 or so inches above that, and just let that run free right next to you. And then the rod in hand, I'm either using a jig or a Swedish pimple, and I'm tipping that with either a 1/2 of a minnow and bouncing it and pounding the bottom with it to make some noise and bring the fish in. Swedish pimple, I'm just using the head right on the treble hook and then pinching the minnow off and just laying that next to me. So that could either be a dead rod, either I have the single shank gold hook or the Swedish pimple as my dead rod, or I can pull my jig and use the Swedish pimple and pound that the same way. So I've got options around me. And what you really are doing is you're trying to find what the fish really want. A lot of times when the fish come in and then, you know, and they're aggressive, they'll hit that Swedish pimple. If they're not super aggressive and they're just looking at your Swedish pimple, the reason I like having that dead rod laying next to me is because they might slide over to the dead rod and just see that minnow just fluttering real lightly, and that's the trigger they want, something a lot more subtle, and they just engulf that completely. And I like to light drag that so that, you know, if I'm not all over my dead rod and I don't see the bite necessarily because I'm busy working my rod in hand, I might hear a click or two of that drag, and I can pick that up, tighten the drag up, and then set the hook. Typically, when you're dead rod fishing, those fish are going to inhale that all the way into their throat. You're not going to have to be super, having them feel a little bit of tension isn't going to be the end of the world, because they're going to have already taken that in and probably hooked themselves. So South Lake in Wolf Bay is a great spot to start. So if you go into the town of Curtis, on your left or on the south side of Curtis is going to be South Manistique Lake. On the north side of Curtis is going to be Big Manistique Lake. Now, I'm not sure of the ice conditions all the way across Big Manistique Lake, but I can tell you that Helmer Bay is a great spot. The Helmer Bay boat launch down to Burnt Island, right there along Birch Shores Resort, Pine Bluff Resort, Mike Soder's Resort, Sunset Point. All three of those resorts, there's lots of rock and gravel around that area of the lake on the east shore. That's a really good starting point right up into Helmer Bay for early season fish. Also, the area around to the west side of Burnt Island is where there's a ton of summer and fall weeds. That's a great spot to start your search if you're looking for perch or bluegill or crappie. Now, crappie is a species that's really been doing well in the Curtis area. South Lake has turned into one of the best crappie lakes in the state, although not many people talk about it. But in the wintertime, they become very susceptible. So if you're into crappie fishing, this is another great opportunity for come to a spot that you know has great crappie. So early season South Lake and the east shore of Big Lake right now in the Curtis area and the Manistique Lake Recreation area. That's our first ice fishing report of the year. We hoped that we would have more locations, but we're kind of happy actually, because we only wanted to report on locations that we knew had safe ice. We don't want to lose any of our followers to stupidity, and right now that's my parting shot to you. Use caution. As you get into southern Michigan, not all ice is safe, and especially on bigger lakes. Be very careful on bigger lakes. If you're gonna fish bigger lakes, fish only the bays. Fish the tight little confined areas of those bigger lakes, and be super careful early in the season. We wanna see you all back here next week on Fisherman's Digest Hot Bites.